All right, welcome back to Conversations with Troy. Troy, in one of our previous conversations, we talked about your first visit to the White House. So let's talk about some other times that you've been to the White House and give us some stories.
When Bill Clinton was elected to the White House, it was very, very interesting. He really had gay friends. David Mixner, a good friend of mine. Right. David knew the Carters personally, had stayed in their home, worked on his campaign, if I'm not mistaken, in Arkansas when he ran for governor, but David really knew him. And David and I, when he was ready to run for president, and he came to LA, David immediately again, he said, you're on the list, on the VIP list, the president, Bill Clinton before he's elected, we'll all get to meet him. There's a small group of us, 25 of us that are going to meet with him. And then we've set aside the front where y'all will go up and stand when the president speaks. Right. And so Bill Clinton, his first trip, the helicopters, everything, by now it's getting a big deal about presidents of the United States or people who are running when they come into a city. And we met in a beautiful gay club in Hollywood. We wanted the president to say he'd been to a gay club if he won. Okay. But again, I really felt good. I'm pretty good with sometimes being able to say, I know this person's going to win. Well, after he spoke, I was so impressed again with Bill Clinton and this man who was the governor of Arkansas, who's now running for president of the United States. And it was real funny. He came down the roll, and my picture appeared in Time magazine, shaking hands with Bill Clinton from the crowd, on the front row, standing down below him. Right. It was very interesting. He very quickly started doing things. I heard about things that were transpiring and happening with the gay community. He was very interested in our community. He used the word gay and lesbian. It was in speeches. It was not a, the rest of America may have been shocked, but some of us were even more shocked that we could tell he was at home, that he had GLBT friends. And he did. His first person he met was a lesbian. He talks about her in his book. And when I read the book, I circled it because I was very, very glad that early on he knew people. And he was one of those generations started growing up with GLBT people. Well, the first thing that happened was he called for a White House, the first White House conference on AIDS. And I was named a delegate to the first White House conference on AIDS. And we arrived at the in Washington, D.C. And the morning session was at the old executive building. Okay. And we went to it, and it was very interesting. He came over. We met. First, there were speeches by different people, and then we broke into small groups, talked about what we needed from the president, and then Bill Clinton came over. Nice. And from the White House, he walked over. Then when he spoke, it was very interesting. Some of the stuff he wanted to do, we fought against. And we were so glad that we were there. Not that he wasn't trying to do the right thing, but he just didn't understand some of what we were trying to say. Now, we were really upset because the president before him, Ronald Reagan, had never even read the report. Yeah. More than not say the word. Yeah. He didn't even read his own report that came out of a commission, like it was just buried. And so here's Bill Clinton, and he's very attentive. But we're explaining why some things about our sexuality that was different than heterosexuals, and why it was very important these kind of things were done. Like, we didn't want to list Kip. We didn't, because the other side was saying we need to be round up and quarantined. Yeah. So for us, it was very important that the president understand why we were so hysterical on that. and it was wonderful. After that, we went to one of the wonderful museums, and the president and the first lady came over.
Nice.
And she had just arrived back, so I got to meet Hillary Clinton, the First Lady of the United States, shake
Right.
hands with her the way you do it. And it was just incredible. It was like a first-class visit with them.
Yeah.
So it was very, very interesting. And he really did go to Congress and start the process of making a change in AIDS.
Yeah.
The next thing that happens is about a year later, I received a phone call, and they told me, the White House, you're invited to the White House. They got a hold of Frank Zarelli,
Right.
and they said, the White House is on the line. He, all excited, he called me and told me, and in my office, and I picked up, and they said, yes, Reverend Perry, President Clinton has named you a delegate to the first White House conference on hate crimes.
Wow.
And I thought, this is important too.
Yeah.
And I took a report from our denomination that was put together by Nancy Wilson,
Nice.
and the the Board of Elders, and the General Council of our denomination. And in it, the other gay groups loved me because I could talk about hate crimes directed at not only our churches, but our pastors too.
Right.
And so we go in to the White House. We have, coffee and rolls with the president in the East Room. They load us onto buses, and they took us to George Washington University. And we arrived at George Washington University. Now, the way we rode together, none of us, I was there. I knew Zelvior,
Yaroslavsky.
yes,
Yeah.
who is
Right.
just finishing his
Supervisor.
job as supervisor here in the county of Los Angeles.
Yep.
Another man who has stood with us in our community
Through thick and thin.
Through thick and thin. So there, when we get on the bus, I'm sitting next to someone I don't know, and as we arrive at George Washington University, this elderly gentleman says to me, "Pardon me," he said, "but I'm legally blind. And would you mind if I took your arm to get into the school?" Right. And he said, "I can see a little, but not really." I said, "Absolutely, sir." I didn't know this man from anybody,
Right.
but I said, "Absolutely, sir." I said, "I'll be happy to help you." And he took me by the arm. Now, I couldn't have paid them to do this. The Westboro Baptist Church is standing in the doorway. God hates fags, all the
Right.
signs that
Right.
they drag around to this day. And here's
They're
this
still the same signs.
in the same signs. But here I am with this man on my arm. His daughter, the pastor of Westboro, who's now deceased, whose name will remain, but his daughter, who I tried to debate, but when somebody screams,
It's not a debate.
yeah, I mean, that's not a debate. I mean, you can't even, it was so awful that I thought, never again with them will I try that, because that was just terrible.
Yeah.
But she recognized me. And as we're walking up to the door, she's screaming at people. She looks up and sees me and says, "Oh, here comes an old fag." Or no, she said, "Here comes a fag." And,
Right.
And so I said, "That's old fag to you." And I walked in, and this old gentleman on my arm, as we get in the door, said, "What did she say about the flag?" And I said, "It's not important. Just keep walking." I said, "It's okay."
Wow.
And we walked in, and Dave, here again, we went in, and we had speakers. Then they broke us up into small groups. And I was in a small group with Zelv,
Nice.
And, you know, so here we are in the room together, and we're talking about what's transpired and happened. Everybody is. I'm there with other politicians from California that I knew, members of the state legislature. And
Nice.
so as we talk, more and more we talk about the broad issue, not just the gay issue,
Right.
but hate crimes in
general.
America,
Right.
and what we need, how that hate crimes are committed against kids.
Absolutely.
Bullying, we didn't have the name bullying back then, but we
Right.
knew what we were talking about.
Yeah.
And what happens to our kids when things like that transpire.
Turns them into monsters later.
Turned into monsters later.
Yeah.
And the kids who do it don't know even why they do it. They've heard their parents.
Right.
I'm convinced that people do not, are not born prejudiced. They have to be taught to be prejudiced.
Yeah.
And I know that my parents, so here we are, we're doing that. Then the next thing is we go back in. The president heard the reports, agreed with us, and we got the hate crimes legislation started
Nice.
and passed. And the next thing that happens, 1 week later, I fly home. Frank Zarelli said, "My God," there was somebody answering the phone for him at the front door of our headquarters at that time. They would give it if it was for me. And the young woman, Buzz Frank, said, "There's somebody, some idiot claiming to be from the White House." He said, "If they say they are, give me that call." And it was the White House, and said, "The president wants to honor Reverend Perry next week. We need him to fly back for, he's going to honor 90 clergy for their work in the American Society. He and the vice president's going to have breakfast with them." And 1 week later, I flew back, and in the state dining room, that only holds 120 people.
Right.
And so I was one of the 90 that are being honored, and the rest were all staffers for the White House. But it was interesting. They put me next to the general of the Salvation Army, the head of that communion, and I had a rabbi on the other side.
Appropriate.
A head of the conservative rabbis in America. So I mean, it was great, and I got to talk to both of them. I always testify. I never let someone not know why I'm there.
Right.
And we had a wonderful time. The only thing was, Bill Clinton kept saying, and we're used to this, when you go visit the White House, if you're clergy, the president always says, "Pray for me." But after about the fifth time, "Pray for me," I thought there's something wrong. Well, a few months later, we found out what was wrong.
Really, pray for me.
Yeah, "Pray for me" was right. And of course I did. And then the last time I visited the White House, it was very, very interesting. I was invited, my partner with me, and I was so thankful. My husband, Philip DeBleek, and I were invited for the 40th anniversary of Stonewall, and by President Obama. And we met, he and First Lady Michelle Obama. Have pictures of us with the president and the First Lady. They were incredible hosts for us. It was just a real thrill.
Nice.
And
to
those
go
are
there
my
with your
visits.
husband.
And to go there with my husband.
Right.
And Philip took some great photographs of me in the White House. And in a book on the history of the gay rights movement, it was very, very interesting. The book Victory, and then the subtitle by Linda Hirschman. She called and asked Philip, could she use one of his photographs he took at the White House. So in her book, she gives him credit for the photograph of Troy Perry at the White House as we were sitting there.
Nice. Very cool. Presidents.
Presidents.
Wow. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, and we will be back.